Hello, welcome to our channel.
Hello.
As soon as you wake up, do you reach for your phone? Or when it's quiet, do you feel the need to turn something on? Maybe without even realizing it, you're caught in a dopamine loop. So what is this dopamine loop? Does it really guide us that much?
First, let's talk about what dopamine is, because people don't necessarily know. After all, they follow this channel, our channel, to become more aware. So I think we should talk about that. Dopamine is one of the hormones that manages our reward system, the reward center in our brain. When dopamine is released, we feel as if we're about to be rewarded, or we feel pleasure from something. In fact, in that sense, dopamine is our source of motivation. Or, that's how reward-based learning happens. When dopamine is released, we feel that we're about to get a reward for something. Attention and focus also require dopamine, because especially when it's released in the prefrontal cortex, our brain's frontal lobe, we focus more on something. In fact, if we get pleasure from something, we impulsively focus on it more. In people with attention deficit issues, it's released irregularly, and that's what causes the attention deficit. And what else is there? The anticipation of pleasure. In other words, it focuses our brain on receiving pleasure. It shows us, it guides us to where we'll get that pleasure. It guides us. Again, of course, in situations where dopamine is released, we also gain movement and energy. Simply put, that's what dopamine does. Also, let me skip the boring parts. And since we're on the topic of hormones, because in a neuropsychological sense, this topic we're about to discuss is a neuropsychological one. It's a field that's developed in recent years, and one I find very interesting. In the language of hormones, how do we feel? Let me tell you about that. When serotonin is released, we say, I'm happy. When endorphins are released, we say, I'm in pain, but I'm still happy. When oxytocin is released, we feel that we're bonding. We say, I'm connecting. And when dopamine is released, this is the thought that goes through our minds. Something's about to happen. This is going to make me happy. It's going to give me pleasure. Something like that.
So you're saying it guides us?
It does. Because there's something there that we'll enjoy. So naturally we want to go there.
So dopamine is the force that gets us moving, but is it also what wears us out?
It does wear us out. Because our brain is a hedonistic organ and it has a hard time controlling its impulses. Frankly, that's generally where our own willpower comes into play. So, why do humans need willpower? I mean, logically speaking, if we were always happy and felt pleasure, what's so bad about that? But even when we increase our rate of pleasure, or our rate of happiness, or our rate of bonding, our connection with others, the brain normalizes it after a while. But we can't get any more of it. That's why sometimes we have to rein in our pleasure seeking. We have to restrain ourselves in this regard. For example, addictions, most of them are dopamine based. For instance, a gambling addiction or, a smoking addiction. Every time we smoke, it triggers a release of dopamine. So because we become addicted to this dopamine, we actually develop an addiction. And that's why we have to rein it in and limit ourselves. When we don't, it becomes exhausting. Because it's more pleasure, more pleasure, more pleasure. And people also develop this belief. This is good, but I can find something better. That's what gets us moving. I mean, the expectation is what's important there. For dopamine, it's not about obtaining it. For example, they do a study with someone who has an alcohol addiction. The study goes like this. The man's routine is to drink every evening, okay? They take him and put him in a room. I don't remember the exact details, but they're not important anyway. They put him in a room and make a deal with him. They say, we won't give you any alcohol for 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, whatever you want to drink, okay? We'll prepare that environment for you. So they convince the man. The man waits for 2 weeks. Then they hook him up to this functional magnetic imaging device. They tell him, okay, tonight you're going to drink whatever you want. And they start imaging the man's brain. Now, I'm asking you, When do you think the pleasure center in the man's brain is at its highest level of activity? At what moment specifically?
The moment he drinks. The moment he gets to drink at the end of the 2 weeks?
The moment he drinks? You mean when he starts drinking?
Or the moment he hears the news?
No, not there.
Where then?
Do you know exactly where? The most active moment is when he sits down at the table in the environment he wanted. It's not when he starts drinking, it's being sure he's going to get that reward. But there's a critical detail here. I'm sure if they had followed the man's normal routine with that brain imaging device, if he had continued to drink every evening for 2 weeks, his brain's pleasure center wouldn't have been that active.
Because it's a situation he's used to.
Of course, he missed it. That's why it got him more motivated. That's why it's tiring. So we have to limit this ourselves. We have to set limits.
Why do we immediately reach for our phones as soon as we get our morning coffee?
Because the brain has learned this. I mean, you got your coffee, and then while looking at your phone, and we generally know what people do on their phones. They're not working, they're not studying, usually, right?
Social media.
Of course, social media. Instagram, Twitter, etc. You know, Facebook, whatever. They're browsing these places and focusing on things that will give them pleasure. They've taught their brains this. Actually, at this point, you mentioned the dopamine cycle. That dopamine cycle you mentioned starts before we even wake up. Your routine is already set. See? Now, when you enter the dopamine cycle, you're not actually happy when you do that thing most of the time. You do it more because you feel restless when you don't. So, people who have this cycle should take a look at why they do their routines.
So gambling addiction, alcohol, we can include all of them under this topic, under this situation. I mean...
Now, in those cases, dopamine is being abused. The release of dopamine in the brain, it's being abused. Yes. So the brain has learned this. And it does it. It immediately picks up the phone after making coffee or when waking up in the morning. Yes.
I can even connect it to this. We switch to the next video before finishing one. Sometimes we don't even enjoy what we're watching. I mean, we're not happy with this situation, but we can't stop either. Why?
Well, that's how dopamine is. I mean, it doesn't want you to feel pleasure. It gets you moving. It just focuses you on the next thing. Like I told you, something is going to happen. Dopamine makes you think something is going to happen. Oh, I enjoyed that. Okay, I'll enjoy it a bit more. Now I'll enjoy it a bit more. Okay, I've gotten all the pleasure I can from this. Let me move on to the next thing, the next piece of content.
Are we thinking, I wonder if there's more?
But our viewers, are they? No, they're not. They have brains that release dopamine as they acquire knowledge. That's why they watch us with curiosity, yes.
So, we feel restless in this situation too, when switching from one video to another. Besides that, we also feel restless when we're not doing anything. We feel like we have to be busy with something right away.
Yes. It's the same thing. What has the brain learned there? Look, in this dopamine release, what's actually happening in our brain is exactly this. We've taught the brain to take action. So in that thing you mentioned, when you stop, when the brain stops, what's actually making you restless is exactly this. A dopamine deficit, a dopamine withdrawal. That's exactly what I was just talking about. I mean, why do we keep up with our routines? Those watching this video should take a look at themselves. If we feel restless when we don't do them, if we become impulsive, then there's a dopamine deficit. It means we can't tolerate it.
How will they replenish it?
What?
The dopamine deficit. I mean, I'm restless in that moment. What should I do, to be more precise?
We don't always have to replenish it. We can get bored too.
Is that normal too?
Yes, so then the issue is addiction to dopamine. Or it could be other hormones. It could be serotonin too. Addiction. I mean, a person addicted to serotonin is always chasing happiness. But we don't always have to be happy, or we don't always have to feel pleasure. We don't have to make every moment enjoyable. We have no such obligation. What happens if we can't have an enjoyable moment? I mean, what happens?
Well, speaking for myself, I think I'm a serotonin addict, and I just do what makes me happy, but that's not right.
It's not.
And I'm aware that it's not.
If something is degrading your quality of life, it's unhealthy. Be unhappy. Spend that moment being unhappy. Say, oh, I'm so bored.
Even at that moment we're talking about, even while we're living in it, we immediately take a picture.
While living those moments?
Yes.
That's one of my least favorite things, for example.
For example, good or bad, by the way, it doesn't matter. I mean, I see it a lot. People record videos even while crying. They record videos while laughing. I mean, I don't know if these things are good or bad, but is it related to dopamine?
Well, this part is related to dopamine, I can tell you that. For example, we go somewhere, a table, we're going to eat, have a nice meal, have a wonderful evening. We go there to have a nice evening or a nice meal, but one of the friends we're with at the table immediately says, wait a minute, nobody eat.
Wait.
And we just stand there like this.
Right.
It's one of my least favorite things. Just stay in the moment, What are we doing there? The brain has learned this. Okay? If that person is going to upload it to social media, their brain has learned to release dopamine from the engagement it will get. Or later, by collecting those moments and looking at them, they'll say, wow, that evening was so nice, so beautiful. Because you lived most of it focused on the photo, the moments you actually stayed in, how valuable and precious they are. For example, many people also do this. For instance, we see it with influencers and such. They go somewhere. They eat a very nice, enjoyable meal. And after they share it on social media, the pleasure of that beautiful meal is over for them. He's taking a photo of it. I don't know. He's commenting on something. We came from here to there. Prices are this high, etc. After telling you these, he is not at the dinner table at all. Do you understand? If you ask him, he is promoting that place and food, but no. Its main source of dopamine is interaction.
So more than just taking photos, the sheer amount of it speaks of an addiction, right?
So you take a photo. Let's take a photo that will either remember our night or our day, our moment. You pull one, you pull two. So let's shoot from this angle. Let's shoot from this angle. Let's shoot some video here. Now everyone stand up. You pass it over there. No, the light is not suitable or something. Things are getting out of hand there.
Okay, I want to ask from this side as well. We feel lazy when we do nothing. Sometimes even resting feels wrong. Yes. What do you think about this?
That's dopamine deficiency. We've introduced the dopamine cycle again. The shortcomings are the last two items, okay? When dopamine is lacking. We cannot tolerate this. It feels like we need to do something. For example, we talked about this in our videos about overthinking, being overly busy or overthinking. If when you have free time, you think of traumatic things or things you should be thinking about that you are trying to suppress, you have never been able to stay idle. It is very difficult for him to remain idle. Well?
When we look at it, actually, more is more, and less is always a problem.
Of course, but I don't really know for sure. All emotions, whether it's sadness or happiness, are just emotions for us,
Need to live.
Of course, when you are sad, stay in that moment so that you can appreciate it more when you have happy times tomorrow or the next day. Because the more we are exposed to something, the more it becomes ordinary.
Starting the phone with a coffee.
Yes.
Clicking on a new video before the two videos are finished.
Yes.
3. Feeling uneasy with silence. 4. Photographing everything. 5. Feeling guilty while resting.
Yes. If you have these 5 things, you have entered the dopamine cycle. So to break this, learn to stay in a little unrest and unhappiness. So you may be bored and unhappy. So what you need to do for this is simple. Don't worry, your brain will adapt. So it won't hurt you. Every moment is for us, every feeling is for us.
So while dopamine motivates us, it can also consume us.
Exactly.
So in which situation do you get caught in the dopamine cycle the most? Write in the comments. Yes, because noticing is the first step to getting out of the cycle.